Hello, everyone. Professor Kurzlik here. We know we are in the middle of the 2026 election season, but we know presidential hopefuls, presidential candidates, people with aspirations to run in 2028 are already situating themselves. We've made a video and talked about Jared Polis here in California, Gretchen Whitmer. So we know that people that are thinking about running are already kind of positioning themselves. So 2 days ago, the Washington Post ran an article, Who's Leading the Wide Open 2028 Democratic Presidential Field? And that's an interesting thing to think about because we don't really know who the front runners of 2028 are. We know that might seem so far away, but like we said at the outset, aspiring candidates are already thinking about how do they position themselves to run for the presidential election in 2028. What should they be doing? What lane should they be taking? We know within the Democratic Party there's this battle between progressives, the more left-wing part of the party, with more moderates, more of the center of the party. And so there's this question right now of what the future of the political party looks like. And so built into that discussion and that question is, okay, who's going to run and what lane are they going to take? So we know that the 2020 Democratic presidential race has not officially started yet. As of now, no one has declared that they are going to run, and there's some reasons for that. Maybe we can think about once you declare that you're going to run, the campaign finance laws change. So right now, no one has actually said they are going to run. With that, there is no clear front runner. If we sit down and think about, okay, well, who could potentially win an election or a national election in 2028 within the Democratic Party, we simply don't know. And connected to that, there is no clear and no obvious ideological lane that really dominates the political party. The Democratic Party. We know it's a big tent. We know there are moderates and conservatives and more left-leaning candidates. So it's this really interesting and fascinating question of, okay, who's going to run, who potentially could win, and what kind of lane are they going to take? So the recent Washington Post analysis really broke down possible 2028 Democratic candidates. Again, they claim that the field is wide open. There's governors, senators, former presidential candidates, House members, even celebrities are all being discussed as possible contenders for running for president. So instead of instead of simply saying, okay, who is definitely running? Because again, we don't know. Maybe a better question to ask is what kind of candidates could Democrats choose from in 2028? So the article breaks down some potential types of candidates. The first group is really the swing state governors and senators. So this is an interesting lane, an interesting group of Democrats. These are maybe people in office, maybe people from states that aren't super democratic, so they've had to they've had to win more competitive elections. And this is an interesting group because Democrats are really still trying to figure out how to win back voters in competitive swing states, especially after Trump's return to power, especially after Trump kind of broke down the blue wall that the Rust Belt had been a safe bet for many Democrats to win the presidential election. Former Rust Belt cities, Rust Belt states, where Democrats did well. Democrats, when they were maybe more associated as a working people's party, they did well in these states. So one group of Democrats is saying, okay, well, we need to recapture these voters if we want to be successful again. We know Donald Trump was pretty successful at capturing many of these voters. So the article talks about people like Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, who is in the news a lot. Mark Kelly, the senator from Arizona, again in the news a lot, maybe positioning themselves. Josh Shapiro goes on a lot of podcasts, a lot of media appearances, trying to get his name out there, his message out there. There were discussions that Kamala Harris would have chosen Josh Shapiro as her VP. We know that didn't turn out that way, but he was in that discussion. Mark Kelly from Arizona, makes a lot of media appearances. And Andy Beshear, the Democratic governor from really deeply conservative and deeply Republican Kentucky, but yet Beshear finds a way to win in these deep red areas in this deep red state. Again, Beshear was talked about as a potential VP for Kamala Harris. Didn't turn out that way. So each of these candidates offer a version of really the same argument that Democrats need candidates who can win outside the safest blue states, outside a place like California. So Shapiro comes from Pennsylvania, one of the most important states in presidential politics, considered a purple swing state. When his name was tossed around for VP in the 2024 election, one of the reasons was that he was from Pennsylvania, that he could help the Harris campaign capture this purple state. Kelly from Arizona, another major swing state, brings his military background and the fact that he was an astronaut. So that might not seem much to you, but when Mark Kelly has talked about his service to the country, is oftentimes brought up as a reason why he would be a good candidate, that he checks these boxes, that he's made sacrifices for the country. Beshear has won, as we mentioned, a statewide race in Kentucky, which makes him interesting to Democrats who want to rebuild support in rural or Republican-leaning areas. So that's the first group of people. The second group is the national profile Democrats. This includes people like Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris, or Pete Buttigieg. Newsom, who I'm sure if you're watching this video, you've heard of Newsom. He is one of the biggest national platforms of any Democratic governor. He is highly visible, being from California, aggressive in his criticism of Trump, and he is comfortable in media fights. He uses social media to really go after the Trump administration, which garners him even more media attention then. And so his online presence is quite large. There is some challenges for Newsom, though. Because he's the governor of California, this being closely associated with California can hurt him outside of the Democratic Party. So maybe he's very good with Democratic voters, but could be a liability in the general election where you have to really capture independents and ideally pull some people from the other side. Being from California, the reputation California has as being super liberal could actually hurt Gavin Newsom. Kamala Harris is different. She already has been the Democratic presidential nominee, has executive experience as the vice president. So this does give her a good amount of name recognition, a good amount of experience, and a pretty substantive national network. But all of this experience also creates a pretty obvious problem. If a party loses a presidential election, voters and maybe even party elites often ask whether they want a new face. So that is something that Harris will absolutely face if she wants to run again. People will say, well, you already had a chance and you didn't win last time. The Harris campaign would probably counter that, well, we only had 107 days, we were in a difficult position. But this is something that the Harris, if she wants to run again, she will have to face. That, okay, you had this opportunity once, you didn't win, you lost to Donald Trump, why should we give you another chance? So Pete Buttigieg does remain one of the party's strongest communicators. You oftentimes see him on Fox News, on social media, putting forward arguments for the Democratic Party's side. What he has going for him, he is young, he's polished, he's experienced. From the 2020 primary and the Biden administration, he has administrative experience as he was the transportation secretary, I believe. But he currently lacks a political office that gives maybe governors and senators a platform to build on. He's currently out of government. Okay, so the article also talks about maybe we could say the third group is really like next generation Democratic senators. This includes people that you may or may not hear as much about, like Elisa Slotkin, Cory Booker, Chris Murphy, John Ossoff, Raphael Warnock, and Ruben Gallego. Maybe some people you've heard a lot about, others maybe not so much. This group matters because senators oftentimes use national issues to build presidential profiles. So some of these folks focus on foreign policy, others focus on economic inequality, some focus on democracy, others on voting rights, others on immigration, civil rights, working class voters. So they can, because they have the platform of being a senator, really focus and work on their issue that matters to them, they find relevant, and can help build a national profile. The problem for senators, though, is that there could be many of them. If too many similar candidates run, they may divide attention, donors, endorsements, and of course, media coverage. So we could see realistically like 20 Democrats running in the primary. This might happen again with the Republicans, but in previous elections, we've seen 17 Democrats run. And so it can be hard to differentiate yourself from others running. You might care a lot about that one issue, and you might try to get that issue as a national issue. But if there are 10 other senators running, that can really make it difficult to differentiate yourself from others. So another group that the article brings up is the ideological or movement candidates. So the most obvious example of this is AOC. She is one of the most well-known, maybe the most famous progressive figures in the Democratic Party, and would immediately change the race if she entered. A candidate like AOC would kind of challenge maybe some of the orthodoxy of the Democratic Party. We would start to hear discussions and debates over should Democrats move in a more progressive, movement-driven direction, Or should they nominate someone who looks more moderate, sounds more moderate, and is more broadly electable? So this is certainly going to be a debate that we see within all of these groups. And like we said it at the outset, what's the future of the Democratic Party look like? Is it a progressive like AOC who really has driven a movement, or more of a moderate like Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania? And so we're going to have this debate within the Democratic Party. Trust me, we'll see it in the Republican Party too. It'll look different. But within the Democratic Party, this debate over, okay, what does the future of the party look like? Is it an AOC, a more progressive candidate? Is she carrying on the Bernie Sanders wing of the party? We'll hear debates over, is that going to be what will win a nationwide election? So there is also this group, we can say maybe a fifth group, outsiders and dark horses. There are always names that sound unlikely early on, but become more plausible as we get closer to the election. The Washington Post article mentions figures like Rahm Emanuel and even celebrity possibilities like Stephen A. Smith. And they might not seem like they're serious contenders, and they might not seem like serious nominees, but they do tell us something about the political moment that we're living in right now. Democrats they don't really have one obvious successor. And that creates room for surprise candidates, unconventional candidates, and candidates who build momentum through media rather than through traditional party networks. If you go on social media, Twitter, Blue Sky, X, you will hear about these existing candidates in fierce debates and discussions over the pros and the cons of each one of these candidates. There's not really a simple and easy future that the Democratic Party has. Again, the Republican Party has this same issue. Who will follow Donald Trump? What will the MAGA movement look like after Donald Trump? But in the Democratic Party side, there's also this debate over what does it really mean to be a Democrat? We know in a more liberal place like the Bronx with AOC, yeah, a more liberal candidate can win there. But if you want to win Iowa again, like Barack Obama did, you want to try to wrestle back the Rust Belt, well, what kind of candidate is going to win in a place like that? So although we're talking about the 2028 election, some of these questions are partially being hammered out and discussed and maybe even answered a bit with the 2026 election. And when we look at, okay, well, who's winning elections in a place like Michigan? Who's going to win in a place like Iowa? And so there's a lot of questions right now, but from the 2026 elections, we're trying to make sense of, okay, well, what will happen 2 years from now? So it'll be fun and interesting to watch. If you're into horse race politics, you can go to places like Cowshe. You can look at the betting markets and see, okay, well, who is most likely in the lead right now? But the truth is, we don't really know because we don't know what the future of the Democratic Party really is. Okay, thank you.